This month, we have Entertainment Board author and MLA, Bob Deep. 14 years as the CEO, former CEO of Music BC and co-founder of the Peak Performance Project. And I'm just going to give it off to you.
Great.
The Business of Music with Bob Deep.
Thanks, let's do that. Thanks, everybody. So thanks, Roland, thanks, Sammy, and Fusion, and everybody for having us. And it's great to be here. This gets me going. I love talking about music, and part of where a career in music came from was I started a program back in the day called the Peak Performance Project, and it ran from 2010 to about 2016. Then it was an Alberta version, and then that turned into Project Wild, which this is their last year. So it's actually spanned 2 provinces and 10 years, and this is the last year. So I'm really pleased that that program happened. A lot of bands like Dear Rouge and Say the Whale and We're the City and Kernswell, and I mean, just so many amazing bands came out of the program and really benefited from that, and also gone on to some really cool things. But what I learned during that is how important it is to take control of your career, and especially now, especially in this time where music and the industry has changed so much over the last 15 years or 10 years. And so really, it's really hard to get a grasp on, I'm a musician, what do I do? The way this will go is there's really 2 parts. The book I wrote has really it used to be 2 books, and I found that people weren't reading the second book as much because there's more law in it, and it's helpful. So I put it in the first book, so hopefully people will actually read that part too. But the first part is more about the general how to make a career in the music industry. The second part is more about how do you build a team around you, agents, managers, label, all that stuff. So those are the 2 parts. But the first part is the 12-step program, and the idea of it is, it really isn't 12 steps, but it's sort of trying to break it into manageable chunks, really. There's a lot more that you can do, but the idea was to have something that you can at least get your head around. So this is where we all started. We all started there. I mean, some of you have been in business a long time, and I understand that, but we all started. That's your mom, that's your aunt, that's your brother, and we all started there, and that's where you started, and this is where we want to be. Yeah. Now, whether or not that represents, a live audience, or whether that represents people downloading your music, whether it means streaming your music, whether that means your audience is music supervisors, whoever that audience is, that's what we want. It's about engaging an audience, it's about communicating with them, and you can see people want to experience that. That's what you want. That's what you're after. That's what we're all after, really, is to have that connection with their fans, with their audience. So that's what you're. So the whole point tonight is, how do we get there? How do we get to that point? So the first thing is, it's really important to establish your role, and that's why I asked everybody, what you want to do. So if you're a singer-songwriter, that's great. Now the question is, if I'm a singer-songwriter, do I want to be a songwriter and just write songs? Do I want to be a performer and a songwriter? So these are the sort of things within the industry you sort of have to decide. Let's say one of the gentlemen in the back, he was really interested in sync, for example, and getting music in film and television. That's great. So if that's a role, that's something that you can aim towards. That's great. So what I always tell people is, you really need to figure out what your role is in the industry, because I'll often say to especially young artists, I'll say, okay, they say, I want to be a huge recording artist, and I want everybody to be, streaming my music. And I say, okay, are you willing to tour? No, I'm not going to tour. Okay, so my immediate response to there is, okay, if you're not willing to tour, maybe you should find another role in the industry. There's lots of jobs. You can have lots of things that you can do. You can be a producer, you can be a songwriter, you can be agent. There's lots of things that you can do, but there's nothing worse than seeing an artist spend a ton of time writing songs, producing songs, and then it doesn't go anywhere because they don't do the other parts that they need to do. They don't buy into what they need to do. So what I'm trying to say is that try to figure out really what you're trying to achieve, and then you can focus on that. And how many of you are in bands? Okay. Another really important thing is within your band, there's also roles. So there's sometimes you'll have somebody who's really good at social media, and somebody's really good at booking dates, and somebody's really good at dealing with the media, and so on. So within the band, it's really important to find the roles of each person within that band and define them, and be really clear about what everyone can do, because you're a business, you're a partnership, and you need to think of it that way. And if you have certain parts that are doing less than others, all that's going to end up happening is over time, that's going to be resentment and bitterness, because somebody's going to be doing a lot more work than somebody else, and so on. So if everybody's pulling in the same direction, everyone knows what their roles are, you're going to be way more successful. Another thing that's really important is excellence. And I say that, being Canadian, we're number 2. We're really, right? So we, as Canadians, we tend to be polite. We tend to, and we do produce excellent music and excellent films and, excellent video games. And we produce some of the top, we have the top CGI companies in the world. We are excellent. Part of that is we have to believe that we're excellent, and we have to strive for that excellence. And so part of it is within that role, whatever you decide to do, you want to be the best in that. Because nowadays, with the digital world, you're competing immediately with everybody in the world. It's different than it used to be. So you really have to be cognizant of the fact that you're going to do yourself a favor if you really strive. I know you're not necessarily going to get there right away, but it's that striving for excellence and not ever, giving up. I find a lot of people will give up on their songs or give up on their recordings or, before they should. So strive for that excellence. So none of what happens after this matters if you don't have great songs. Nothing. Like, you could have the best marketing plan in the universe. If you don't have great songs, nothing's going to happen. So for me, it sounds trite, but it all starts with a song. There's a reason why that's trite. It's true. It all starts with a song. And so this is, again, when we're talking about excellence, I find a lot of times with artists, how many people here started playing an instrument when they were young, like 5, 6, 7, So most people say that, and then when you say, well, when did you start writing? They'll say, when I was 16, 17, sometimes in their 20s. So there's a really good chance that you put that Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours into the craft of your guitar or your piano or your voice, but you haven't with songwriting. And songwriting, you need to put that same amount of time, energy, and commitment into. So what I find with a lot of younger bands or younger artists when they come up is they might be killer instrumentalists or singers, and their songs are way lagging behind. And it's actually the songs that are holding them back, not their ability to play. And even bands that are established, it's still this sort of slow catch-up. So a few remedies from that: write every day. If you're going to be a songwriter, every day. Like, it's a muscle. You gotta exercise that muscle. The other thing is co-write. I found I've learned more from co-writing with people. You can actually, I think, cut that 10,000 hours down quite a bit if you can actually pull from people who have tools. Like, it's amazing when you co-write with people who have been writing for a long time, because you will learn so much about writing just from being with someone who writes. And they also, nearly everybody comes at writing from a different angle. So sometimes you can learn, if Ryan Gilganon from Mother Mother, for example, he doesn't believe in writer's block. He doesn't believe that it exists. You're like, what? Say, because around us, in everything in nature and in the world, there's inspiration. Like, it doesn't matter. That fan. If he was in here right now, he would say, that fan is an inspiration. Or that ticking sound, or the rain outside, or the bird chirping, or whatever it is. There's always something that can trigger that emotion and that ability to write a song. So really important to do that. And writing with someone like him, you learn so much. I've written with a guy named Sean Barreau from Wide Mouth Mason, and it was just this crazy experience for me, because not only does he play like he sold his soul to the devil or something, he also writes lyrics like the Unabomber. It's like every word in this book, like, he does this free flow thing, and we're writing a song, and all of a sudden, he pulls out one of his notebooks, and then that's it, that's the line. And because he'd written it like 6 months ago, but because he's always writing. So I encourage all of you, write, because that's the most important thing. And even when you've got a song, it's like writing a novel or writing anything else. A lot of people will stop before it gets from good to great. And often greatness is the little things. It's not, you might have the main part there, but it's sometimes those little things that push it over the top. And I like to use Tom Cochrane as an example because he wrote a song called Love is a Highway. It was a good song. It had some neat parts in it. And one of the guys in the band said, well, what about Life is a Highway? And then the spark went on and he wrote this song that actually became the biggest song of his career. And so let's think about that for a second. One word changed Tom Cochrane's life. We're talking about little things. One word changed his life. So, really important to think about how you need to push yourself with your songs, rewrite, dig in. And this is also another thing with writers. I find this a lot with, like, you know, when you work with artists who are 15, 16, that kind of range, and they bring you a song, and you're like, oh, you know, it'd be a really good idea to start with the chorus and do this. And they're like, no, you can't touch my song. This is the song. This is it. It's like my soul. You know, it's like this rigidity, right? But I promise you, getting from good to great often means blowing up songs. Having the confidence to know that you can always go back to the original. And, you know, it hasn't gone away. It's still there, right? But let's try some different things. And then sometimes that thing will happen, you know, and all of a sudden it pops up into that sort of greatness. And, I mean, I've been writing my whole life, and I can tell you I haven't written a great song. I have not written a great song. I would love, that's my bucket list, write a great song. Still not there yet, but I mean, one day. There's always hope, right? So giving up, letting go, letting your songs breathe. If you work with a producer, don't get angry with the producer when the producer says, you know, it might be an idea if you know, put a double chorus here, or maybe you need to go out and write a really great bridge, and then, you know, no, this is the song, we're not going to change it. Don't do that. Because you're stopping yourself from getting to greatness. Okay, so this is where I say, are there any questions? Because, yes. Yeah.
If the producer suggests the bridge or then a chord to put in because I'm working songwriting.
Yeah.
So do I write him as co-writer?
Okay, so that's a really good point. So I was dealing more with the creative process, but the question is around more the copyright and the legal and that side of things. And so whenever you write with somebody, it's really important, especially if you co-write, to talk about it before you write. Okay, are we going to split this 50-50? Is this, I don't know what you say. I've already written this song, so if you help me with this, then it's only a bit. And, you know, have that conversation. A lot of times the problem is producers and artists are both artists. Like a producer is actually an artist in the studio, if you think about it. So they tend to be just as bad as songwriters with dealing with their contracts and dealing with their paperwork. And so as a lawyer, I end up dealing with all these crappy situations where songwriters and producers and artists have butted heads about this, that, and the other. So talk about it in advance, figure it out, and generally speaking, there's a line between songwriting and arrangement. So a lot of what producers do is arrangement. So if somebody takes a chorus and they move it to the beginning of the song, that is not songwriting, that's arrangement. They don't get a songwriting credit for that. That's their job, okay? That they don't get a songwriting credit. Now, if a producer writes a bridge, well, they're writing a part. Now, what is a bridge worth in a song that has a verse and a chorus and maybe a pre-chorus? So what is that worth? Is that worth 10%? Is it worth 20%? That's something you need to talk about. There's no hard written rule about what percentage it is. I mean, obviously, if someone writes the main hook, that's got to be worth more. If the producer writes the main chorus hook, then that could be worth a lot more, maybe a 50-50 split, even though you've written all the verse and the bridge and all that. So I would say it's on a case-by-case basis, but it's really, really important to have that conversation with whomever you're working with, especially a producer. And with the producers, too, is because of CD sales disappearing, and there not being that sort of back end that they would normally get for record sales, a lot of producers are trying to get into people's songwriting a lot more than they used to because that's where the money is. So I'm seeing a lot more producer deals include songwriting bits, and often some producers will push the envelope and say they're a songwriter when they aren't, and I always push back on that. So I wish there was like a hard and fast rule on songwriting splits, but the main thing is talk about it, get it in writing, make sure everybody's clear, because you don't want to finish a song and then get in a battle. So there were a couple of hands. Sorry, there was one in the back, and then, yeah, yes, sir.
So, I'm in kind of a situation, I guess, I'm at the point where I demoed my song, and it's only been my work. And now I want to bring in a guitar player to play on it.
Okay.
Is there a standard procedure where, let's say this person came in and said, I want a few beers to play on it, or you paid him $50 or whatever the deal is. Is there something that you should have in writing to protect yourself against it coming back at you if the song were to do anything?
Well, the short answer is yes. I have, I do a lot of side performer agreements for clients where that exact scenario happens, and often what will happen is if someone's just coming as a session work and they're just playing a part on something that's already written, the contract will clearly say that and say you're getting your $200 or $100 or whatever it is, and you are not a songwriter, and it's very clear. Now, if someone writes, a Keith Richards hook, and it's like all of a sudden that's a hook.
Yeah.
Okay, you're a songwriter, So it's a question of what they do too, and it's also what your intention is. If they're coming in and playing rhythm on it, or even playing a solo, it's not songwriting. I mean, to me, a song is the lyrics, the vocal melody, and the harmony, primarily.
Or a major hook.
And when I say melody, I'm talking about instrumental melody as well as vocal melody. So vocal melody, instrumental melody, lyrics, and harmony. And because harmony, it can be part of how it plays with the melody. It's not as clear as the melody. It's certainly melody, whether it's instrumental, vocal, and lyrics. So when you start adding other parts, then it does become sort of arrangement at that point. Unless that part becomes, I always, like the test for me is it not that song anymore if that part's gone? Then I think it's part of the song, right? So
can you work something out where you say, okay, I really like what you did. I know you just came in to play some rhythm, but this has changed the song and made it so much better.
Yeah, I mean, you can be magnanimous and say, sure, yeah.
Points or something.
You could. The only danger is giving like 5% or 10% on a songwriting credit. It makes it, let's say you get a sync on that, and you haven't, for a sync is if you get a film or television or video game placement where they want to use your song on there, it's called a sync license. So if a film or television show wants to use your song, it's called a sync. So if you got a sync on that and you've given 5% of the songwriting to somebody and they're off in Argentina, how do they sign up on it? So sometimes when someone has a small percentage of a song, in the contract it'll say, yes, you're a 5% songwriter or 10% songwriter, but I can sign off on sync deals. I can administrate this song. So that's what I try to build into this small percentage type deal, so that even though someone might be able to register with SOCAM at 10% or 5% or 20%, the principal songwriter maintains the right to deal with the song. Because if you don't have that, then you're going to have to chase that person down for every deal. And anybody who's done a sync deal knows it can happen like that, and you've got to be able to decide within 5 minutes, like sometimes. It's not like you have 24 hours. It's sometimes like, we demoed to your track, and the producer really likes it, and we're leaving in 5 minutes. You want it in or out? And you get that. It's like, $1,000. Can't. My guy's in Argentina. Okay, sorry. See you later. That's it. And it happens. So, again, take care of business. I think if you were going to do something like that, fine, but just make sure you got it sorted legally or in a contract or something. Okay? Does that make sense? Cool. Is there another question? Yes.
So if you're in a band setting, like let's say I'm the core songwriter for my band,
Yep.
but I have a bass player who plays on the tracks, and
Yep.
we're all a team,
Yep.
am I retaining 100% of the songwriting rights, or how does that kind of work in terms of that sort of dynamic?
Well, that's why I always suggest bands have a band agreement.
Oh, sure.
And one of the things that's key in there is what do you do about the songs? And every band's different. Some bands, Metallica, I believe, it's everybody's equal. It doesn't matter if it's songwriting or sales or live, everybody's equal, right? Other bands, you know, Sting, he wrote his parts and he wrote everyone else's parts too. You know, even if they wrote them, that's Sting. So, but so in situations where you have one songwriter and 4 other players, I usually suggest as a lawyer to say, hey, look, you know, to avoid the future scenario where there's a beer commercial and the songwriter gets $15,000 for that as the songwriter and the band gets 0 because they're not the songwriter, and you're buying a car and they're eating craft dinner, to avoid that scenario, you might want to consider having some of that revenue come to the band. So what I'll normally do is take a chunk of the revenue. The songwriter's a songwriter, but the chunk of the revenue comes into the band, and the band can just distribute that. And one way you can do it is if a band member leaves, they're actually leaving that revenue, you know, depending on how they leave. You know, there might be a buyout or something. So you try to think of all that. It's kind of like a prenuptial agreement. I know it sucks, but it's true, you know. And one thing that's inevitable in any band is someone's going to leave, right? Like, so that's why I always suggest having those band agreements sorted out in advance. Because I would say the things, as a lawyer, I've dealt with that are the most contentious are songwriting and things like that. Like, that's what people start fighting about. And I'm like, you guys are fighting about, this is not making any money, you know, and you're still, like, killing each other over this. Like, just dial it down. No, this is the most important thing. So, it's just good to deal with that. Sorry, there was a question there. Sorry,
So
did you have a
songwriter?
I was going to comment.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Hey, comment first?
No, I was going to just let her know, like, besides the writer's share, that
Right.
the person producing the music would also own the masters for that song, the master
Right,
license
so,
for that. So you would have to
Yeah.
work out a buyout for that or
so,
a deal.
yeah,
on
to
that
be
as well.
clear, that's another reason, there's a couple of things here from a legal point of view. Another reason to have a side performer agreement is there's a copyright in the performance. So if the person hasn't given you a clear copyright, like an assignment of that performance, then they retain that. So they could theoretically come out of the woodwork and say, you know, take my performance off. A producer has a, you know, when they produce it, has a copyright in the sound recording. So that's another copyright. So there's a copyright in the song, there's a copyright in the performance, there's a copyright in the sound recording. So a producer, that's why you need a producer agreement, because then the producer is assigning the producers, you're paying, the producer's producing it, so they have that maker right, and then when you pay the money, they're assigning those rights to you. And so that's why producers will sometimes, when there's a dispute where the artist refuses to pay, the power they have is say, well, then you can't use the tracks, you know, and there's not much you can do, you know, other than pay the producer what they're owed, right? So, but you're absolutely right to bring that up. And so there's different copyrights. I'll get to that later, but this is more on the creative side. But okay, if we move on, because we'll be dealing with some of this stuff later on. Yes, sir.
So, I've looked at this before and I just
Yeah.
can't find it, about cover songs
Yeah.
and remixes, where you're actually using the original recording.
Okay.
Just releasing stuff like that is pretty hard, and I haven't found a way to do it. How do you do it?
Well, I mean, technically, they have a copyright, so you would have to get. In fact, I just did a deal for an artist who's doing a remix, where they're using someone's track and they licensed it. They licensed the recording. They agreed on what the mix was going to be. The problem is, if you're using like a big artist, it's really hard because the labels don't get back to you. They don't care. They really don't have time. So that's one of the challenges. But technically, you're going to need to go to the label and the publisher to get those clearances. Yeah. I mean, it sucks, but it's same with samples. Samples are the bane of my existence, you know, because artists will throw in samples and, well, I didn't know. It's like, you know, like, really? You didn't know? The police. Yeah, come on. Whatever. Anyway, moving right along. Okay, so you got the greatest song in the world. Now we're talking about recordings. Having world-class recordings is critical, and again about this striving for excellence. But it's also important to understand that songs have different roles. So a song live is different than a song in the studio. Or a song, let's say, used in film, where they might just use the backing track and no vocals on it. I mean, there's different roles that songs can play. So sound recording, it's really important to figure out in advance what you're using, what it's for. And if you want a song on the radio, well, don't record a 10-minute song. I mean, and the reason for that is it could be the best song in the universe, and it could be the best sounding song. But radio is about selling advertising. And if you have a 10-minute song, you are putting 10 minutes between one ad and another ad. And they don't care about the music. They care about the ads. Your music is the filler between the ads. I swear to God, that is what radio is. It's about selling advertising. I've been to so many broadcaster conferences. They don't talk about music. They talk about selling ads. 99% of all the conference seminars are on ad sales. So just everyone needs to get that straight. Commercial radio is about selling advertising, not playing your music. It sucks. There is a music director whose job it is to try to, fight for your songs to the rest of the department, but they're going to look at it and go, well, I can't, that's way too long. It's going to affect my ad sales. No way, So just keep that in mind. So, obviously there's examples like Pink Floyd and others that sort of buck the trend. I'm not saying there aren't. There's always an exception to the rule in music, but I'd say if you think your song might be possible for commercial radio, you're going to have to keep it in a crystallized form. And I think of someone like Dan Magnet's Robot song, which he sings for 10 minutes live and has this huge sing-along at the end, but the recorded version has the sing-along's implied. It's not a 10-minute version on the album, it's a short version. Or, I love robots too, whatever that is, that line. But, so know what the songs are for. Now, if you don't care about commercial radio, or you don't care about Sirius XM or any of that stuff, fine. I mean, then you can record whatever you want, but just try to make sure you know what you're recording. Make sure that it's excellent. And for all of you that are producers or engineers and doing your own music, I would strongly suggest to hire a mixing engineer once you've got the tracking done. And the reason for that is particularly now when artists are writing the songs, tracking the songs, bringing in everybody, doing all that stuff, you're way too inside. So when it gets, I would say honestly that your ears are done at that point. It's very difficult to get that objectivity that you need for a mix when you're so inside. You nearly need to walk away and then come back and see it fresh or whatever you need to do if you're going to mix it. That's fine. And maybe, hey, I know a lot of artists who are really good, like Brian from Mother Mother. He can do it. He's crazy enough that he can do it. So, but I'm just throwing it out there that I have yet to see a situation where a really good mixing engineer hasn't taken a track and made it better. If they're the right person. And also, I didn't put mastering there, but that next bit obviously is very important before you put it out. So, there's the studio, there's the producer, there's the mixing engineer, and of course mastering. And finally, just on this, it's really important not to chase trends. So many people are chasing after what's going on, and by the time they get something out, it's moved on to another sound. So what I would suggest is find out who you are, find out your sound, and just stick with it. Don't worry about other people, because it'll otherwise come around, or your sound will match or work, or you'll just find your niche. Because I can't guarantee you success, but I can guarantee if you're chasing a trend, that by the time you get it out, the trend's probably moved on. So, and that's really in the dance world, and you know what I'm talking about, right? They have a different word for every kind of mix. Like, as soon as you get one kind of mix, they move to the next kind of mix with another weird name, and on and on and on. It's like chasing your tail. But just be really good at what you do and stick with it, and I think you'll have much more success. Anything on recording at all? Yes, sir.
for radio songs and for Sirius XM, is there a certain length of song that one should?
So we're talking about satellite and digital radio as opposed
and
to
commercial, or is there a difference between?
Well, there is in a sense because, when you're not dealing with, when you're dealing with subscription or you're dealing with just the music playing, as opposed to the ads like commercial radio, it could be different. The problem, of course, is then you're tailoring songs for different reasons. Like, so you'd have a different mix for Sirius XM and another mix for CFOX, or that's
Could you
how
do that?
you could. Absolutely, I don't see why you couldn't. There's no rules, right? But the problem, of course, is if you hire someone like a radio tracker, and there's people that will go out and try to help you get your songs on radio. They're called radio trackers. You might confuse them if you give them multiple products. So if you're doing it yourself and you have a plan and you're going to say, well, this one's perfect for commercial radio, and then this longer version might be good for film and TV, nothing's stopping you from doing that nowadays. Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's easier to pick something and just that's what you're marketing, and it's just one thing.
What's the length of a radio signal, an average radio signal? Like, there are some Billie Eilish songs that are 2 minutes and a little bit, and some Lady Gaga songs are like 4 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, Lady Gaga pushed the envelope in terms of time. She was sort of able to do that. Madonna did that a bit. Some of them pushed it, but they were playing on their notoriety. I would say, 3.5. If you're getting to 4 minutes, you're starting to push it. So I remember like the average Green Day song was like 2 to 2:20. They were over before they started. 30 songs on a record.
And how much key change modulations do you think would ruin a song? Like if you hear a song, you're like, oh, they should have done it, moved up and then gone to another key, then come down and changed the tempo. Like, do you find that makes the song not as good, or do you find that people like it more?
That depends on the song.
It depends on the
It
type
really,
of song, yeah. Because sometimes I hear a song and I think, oh, I wish they did it like this. And then just like him, I always wish like I could rewrite that song and change.
Well, I mean, my son and I had this huge talk about this one part where I'm like, it'd be really good there is if it went up a semitone, right? And he goes, that's pretty country, Dad. I don't know. And he did it. He goes, oh yeah, that's cool. I said, well, that's because you never do it, right? So that's why I was surprised. Yeah. So you never know, right? I mean, if you can do things that can be cheesy, or if you do them too obviously, sometimes it just works. So
It really works sometimes.
that's the thing. It is art still. That's the thing. Is there is the box. Like if you're commercial radio, you're in a time box. If you're in a creative box, it kind of sucks that way. But there's a lot you can do within that box. You just and some artists have made it their career to basically be like Picasso and learn all the rules and then break them, and learn how to slightly break them. Sting was always really good at that. Just like
It makes it more interesting.
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. All right. Next, promo materials. Okay. God is in the details. There's no doubt about that. The fact is that again, everything needs to be excellent. You got great songs, you got great music. Now, if you have really crappy pictures and a bio with typos in it and no video content and your website hasn't been updated in 8 months, you're not doing yourself a service. So I think the main thing is that the level of your songs, the level of your recordings, and the level of your promotional materials should all be at a high level. And so that means that your promo pictures should be pro. Now, that doesn't mean you have to hire a $5,000, photographer. You can. You can spend a lot of money on a really great photographer, but you can. There's lots of great photographers out there that can do a really good shot. It's the shot that matters, not the person that does it. And there are some really good student photographers or people that love to do it. The main thing is it's got to be a really good, compelling shot. And I always suggest that people don't. Some people get really cute with shots and have it all fuzzy, or they have like weird, one artist like had a mask on. I mean, you can do it if that's your stick, and you have to really think about it. If you're going to go outside of something that the media is going to understand, that's fine, but you got to understand that you're really making it difficult if you do the wrong thing. So I always suggest clear picture, black and white and color, because if you get the front of the Georgia Strait, it's color, and make sure you have a color, really good color picture and a really good black and white. And as far as video is everything these days. It's so important. You've got to be on YouTube. You have to be on YouTube. Now that doesn't mean that you need full production videos for everything. It doesn't. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube which is lyric videos, just the lyrics, or there's some people just put the cover of the album and the music on there. I mean, some people do a whole ton of things on YouTube that are more bloggish and behind the scenes kind of stuff. There's a lot you can do on YouTube, but your music has to be on YouTube. Very important. And all of that has to live on a website. And it's very important that you need your own URL, because there's value in that. Because if you become a big artist, that's where people are going to go. So you need to own that. It's so important. Because if all of your energy is on social media, it'll end up like MySpace, where I spent in the early 2000s, I don't even know how much time building up followers on MySpace, and then it just disappeared. All that work just gone. Just whoosh, all those fans gone. Just disappeared, right? So if you have your own URL, people go to you, you control it. You can have your, a whole bunch of stuff on there that you control. Very, very, very important. And you can control the branding on that. So let's look at a couple. That's Aaron Pritchett, good friend of mine. Awesome. He's got his social, really important, right up front and center. So if you want to go to his Facebook, Instagram, you want to listen to his music, or Twitter, it's all there. He's got tabs for about news, videos, shows. Shows really important. On this side, music, blog, friends. He's got his dates and everything. It's clean. It's easy to access. There's the country theme. Paul Brandt, same sort of thing. Home journeys. Now he doesn't have his. He has all his social lower down. I'm not a big fan of that. I think that top right, or that top part, is the most important in terms of pulling people's eyeballs. So I kind of like to have the social, like Emerson Drive has. It's right there. It's the top right corner is actually the most valuable real estate. So, but there's some certain elements you need. You need music, you need videos, you need your live performance, and you also, I don't see it, but you need a store. You need a store, and that's where if someone doesn't buy your merchandise at your show, they need somewhere to go. So don't disappoint. And I always suggest too that it's important to have a email, a newsletter capture, so that basically people can give you their email. That's, to me, critical, because again, if you look at the MySpace thing, that disappears, you lose it. If you have someone's email, you have a direct contact with that person. So email, I know not as many people are using email as they used to, but if you can get it, it's valuable. It's really valuable. And you can use something like MailChimp, where they sign in, it goes straight there, it builds your database. Whenever you do a newsletter, it's automatic. There's a lot of things you can do to help yourself with that. Okay. So before we leave that, sorry. Push the wrong button. Before we leave that, is there anything about websites or promo materials, bios? Yes.
What happened to MySpace and where did they all go?
Well, see, it's such a good question.
Still there.
I mean, they are,
Still there. MySpace is still around.
but nobody
Still
uses
asking
it.
for it.
The people don't use it. That's the
No,
thing.
no.
So it was this mass exodus of fans. Yeah, Facebook just destroyed it. And the thing is that for whatever reason, and that's the thing about Twitter. Didn't exist. All of a sudden, boom, within a year, everybody's on Twitter.
But it's novelty. People like change.
That's the point. So, and look at what happened with Facebook with the whole Russia meddling in the elections. I mean, it could have been possible that the whole thing could have fallen down, and then all of a sudden Facebook's gone. And that would have been, holy crap, right back with MySpace. So, I'm saying anything that you can get that's a direct contact with your fans, and anything that you can own and you can control, like your URL and emails, get it. Very important. Okay? Okay, how's everyone feeling? Good?
Good.
All right. So, great songs, great promo materials, great recordings, but 90% of your revenue is going to come from live performance as an artist. So all the other stuff's great, but you know, this is where you're going to make your money. This is the live performance sales, merchandise, sponsorships. That's driven from playing live, because Roland's going to sponsor you probably if you're playing live and they can see Roland up on the stage, right? I mean, that's the whole point. So those things are really important. I'd encourage any of you, if you haven't, Tom Jackson he's a country producer, but he's the only live performance producer I've run into who's really drilled down. He's got videos and books and a whole bunch of stuff. So now, mind you, it's more in the country community, but there's a lot of things in there that you can pull out for yourself. Just take the bits, because he's got so many good ideas about what to do in a live performance. And he taught me two big things. Create moments. Creating a moment. If you've ever gone to a concert and there's a part that just moved you, it was a moment, and you're like connected with that artist, you're a fan for life. You will remember that for the rest of your life. And that's what you want to do. Live performances is about creating moments. And the problem with so many live performances is people just get up, like singer-songwriters, mic, guitar, and just sing for an hour. And it just, I mean, that isn't necessarily entertaining. It's not, it might be interesting from a songwriting point of view, but it's not necessarily entertaining. And you are an entertainer. Don't forget that. This isn't about you. This is about them. This is about the fans and engaging with your audience and connecting. So to do that, you need to entertain. And by entertaining, you have to think about your show. And that's the second bit. People hear with their eyes. And I know that sounds totally counterintuitive. The first time I heard that, I went, that's crap. That doesn't make any sense. But if you think about it, if I had 5 people up here and they were all jumping around all over the place and playing and having a good time, you'd be looking like this and you'd be like confused and wondering what's going on. If that same group, singer, when they're singing, steps up and you see the singer and everyone else is there, and then when the guitar plays, the singer steps back and lets the guitar come up, and you can see the guitarist, and there's some thought put into when people are playing and what they're doing. You do a ballad, bring out a chair, sit down, or go to different parts of the stage. You really think about what you're going to do. And it's amazing how people really react to that. Think about the moments within your songs and amplify those. Bring them out and make sure it's like, this is a moment. Okay? Make sure people see it. Because so many times, awesome moments just pass by. Because, the guitarist is jamming with the drummer, and that awesome moment is like, yeah, I don't need you guys, I got the drummer, right? Moment passes you by, yeah.
Get a good spotlight person.
Well, the interesting thing bringing up spotlights is that at some point in your career, when you get to a certain level, there's going to be a lighting crew. And then you're going to have to block out the lighting, right? You're going to be forced to do that. So why not start that way, And it's not just about it's not just about that. It's about creating a show that actually connects with people. And if they see something that looks the same, it starts sounding the same. So you want to try to think of each song and how you can bring those moments out in that song, and how can you share that with the audience in a way that they're gonna notice it. And Taylor Swift, who worked with Tom, they did a lot of work on that. And if you see Taylor Swift, it seems quite spontaneous, but every minute detail is worked out with her shows, like every single second. Now, I'm not saying you need to go that far, but you want the point is, a lot of people say, well, then how can I be spontaneous? Well, what you do is you have a structure, and within that structure, you can be spontaneous. So, and okay, I'm going to play a keyboard solo. Now, everyone knows I'm going to do that. What I do from night to night could change. There could be spontaneity within what you do. So some people think that producing is cheesy. Well, it's not. It's just being professional, in my opinion. It's just making that transition from being a garage band to being a professional band, And if you do that, you'll notice, people start noticing, agents start noticing, buyers start noticing, it's natural, because you look professional. You look like I always say you should be looking like, if you're playing the Biltmore, you should look like you should be in the Commodore. if you look like you should be in the Biltmore, probably going to stay in the Biltmore. Like everybody in that circuit where you're in that 200 to 300 circuit, and everyone's like, why can't I break out of this? It's because you're not breaking out of it because you don't look like you should break out of it. You don't look like you belong in the Commodore. And then when you're in the Commodore, you should look like you belong in Rogers Arena. You know? You've got to always change. And I always, as an example, I always use Chris Martin. The first time I saw Chris Martin, swear to God, and I was a big Coldplay fan, and he's sitting there at his piano, and he's like playing his piano, and you know, he was actually nervous with his audience. He was gawky and kind of tall, and you know. And I came away from that show less of a fan. And so the second time I saw him, he'd obviously put some work in. Like he was up off his stage, you know, they thought about the show. He was not just playing the piano all the time. He was on the mic. Sometimes he's on the piano. Sometimes he's on the mic. Sometimes he's doing things down the ramp and all that stuff. The third time I saw him, it was earth-shattering. It was mind-blowing. It was like this epic show. And he went from being a great artist to up in the stratosphere with some of the best front people in the world. But that didn't come naturally for Chris Martin. I promise you, because I saw his development every time I saw him. So he kept growing. So the point is it doesn't matter what stage of development you are as an artist. There's always room to grow and get better. So just think of that when you're designing your show or thinking about your show. And they kept growing, and so you know, and I think it has a lot to do with how much work he put in and his band put into just always growing.
I think that comes with confidence.
Yeah, part of it. I think part of it's confidence, and I think confidence. I know for me, I'm confident when I'm prepared. If I'm not prepared, I'm not confident. So I'll get up on if I had to come out today and I hadn't prepared anything, and I had to talk to everybody here, and we just kind of riffed, and I was like, but it's spontaneous, you know. I would feel nervous, right? But I've thought about all this stuff, and I've thought about how I want to say it to people. And so I hope it's more impactful. And it's the same with any of your performances. So I'm encouraging all of you to think about that when you produce your live shows. Yes, sir.
Like Michael Bublé was a big star, but he honored his orchestra, and what he did on the screens, he had them like a team with numbers and jerseys.
Oh yeah.
And then they all did their like songs.
Well, yeah, Michael's.
I mean, that was fantastic marketing.
Talk about an entertainer. I mean,
Yeah.
that guy was an entertainer when he was this big, right?
I know, but I'm
mean, he's
just
always
saying
been an entertainer.
They thought it out.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
great.
But he works at that, and those are big shows, right? He has
Yeah.
a lot of players, a lot of moving parts. So, yeah.
At what point in your journey of being an artist would you say you should start building your audience? Are you recommending maybe you have a song first to showcase to people so they know if you like you? If you create an Instagram account to give people a vibe of who you are, you don't have music yet, but you could do like live performances, say, or something like that. At one point you start putting your name out there.
Well, I don't think there's any time to not do that. I think, you know, get on an open mic tomorrow. You know, it's like, you know, the more you play, the better. You know, obviously you want to continue to grow. So I would encourage you to not only do that, but get in the studio, write songs, start producing, and I'll get to it in a minute. I mean, at first it's okay to sort of be a little bit like as you go, but there's going to be a point where you're like, okay, I have to be way more strategic about this, you know, because let's say I want to do an EP, so now I'm putting a lot of effort into this, so I'm not going to just put it out without thinking about my live performance and my video and my website and my branding, and I'm not going to rush it out. I'm going to think about it and have a good amount of time. So those are the sort of things that you will do, but you're going to have to hone your craft. You're going to have to get out and learn your chops playing and getting in front of people and feeling confident on the stage. And, you know, playing live is a great way to test your songs, too. See how the audience reacts to them before you go and record. Like, see how people react. If they're just nothing, sort of like stand-up, right? Oh, I'm going to lose that joke. Right?
Right. Cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So now you got this great show, everything's going well, and this is where sort of the rubber hits the road, because it's, you know, there's one book, John Nesbitt, he talks about high tech and high touch as sort of the new marketing model, and that's very true. Yes, there is social media. Yes, there's digital marketing. Yes, all that stuff, important. But connecting with fans live is nothing more powerful than that. And I don't think we'll ever invent anything that's more powerful than that. Even when you see live performances on TV, it doesn't have that same feel, or even on a big screen. Sometimes they can, you can get that hype and you have a lot of people in a room and stuff, but nothing is better than that live performance. I had a question earlier, should I press up CDs? Excellent question. How many people actually have a CD player? Right? Well, that's actually plugged in. I have a CD player, I don't know where it is, but I mean, they don't ship computers with CDs anymore. I mean, CDs have become a bit of an anachronism to a certain extent, but it's still a merch item though. I mean, it's still something that might be worth doing for, like, if you have a T-shirt and a CD, it's not a bad thing. It's a physical thing you can sell. It sounds great compared to online stuff. Some artists, if it's appropriate, are doing vinyl because vinyl's made a huge comeback. Yeah.
One guy had a bracelet, a rubber bracelet, and you just unplugged it and you put it in your computer. That's
Oh, yeah.
fabulous. It's from Germany.
Yeah, I mean, that was a thing for a while with the downloads. But that was when before streaming really took off. There was all sorts of little, like little thumb drives. I mean, I remember the Bare Naked Ladies put out an album as a thumb drive, right? So I mean, there was this little brief window, but downloads kind of went the way of the dodo. I mean, it's definitely moved towards streaming now.
There's also that, you hand a piece of paper and it's got that kind of code.
Oh, the QR code?
Yeah.
Yeah. All a QR code is really is just a link to a website.
Yeah.
Really. So it's a good way of getting people to your website or getting them to wherever you want them to go, to a store or something like that. But I would think long and hard about the value of spending a lot of money on a CD right now. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just think about it. It's got to make sense. You don't have to do huge runs anymore too. You can do like a couple hundred and just see how it goes. I just be careful with that because it costs a lot. And if I had a choice between spending money on a CD or putting gas in the van, I'd put gas in the van, right?
It's more for gas
Still have
than
to spend money to get the crap made, regardless.
Yeah, but there's different ways to get it out. And the thing is that the main way now is streaming. The main way is Spotify and Apple Music and Amazon and the
But you
streaming
get
services.
so little when you sell it like that. You get more money in your pocket by some of the options.
Well, there's that too. And as
Yeah.
part of the reason to do the CD is you get that upfront.
Yeah.
The thing about streaming is it's a long tail, right? I mean, you're not going to get, you're going to have millions of streams before you see significant
I think
money.
it's 486 streams equals one CD. I read somewhere.
Yeah, there's different formulas. I mean, my distributor said it on Spotify. It's about 180 paid streams is $1, but unpaid streams is about 3,000. So
Okay, it's
so unpaid streams pay fractions of pennies. So it's the streaming, the paid streams. If someone actually is a subscriber to Spotify or Apple Music, the paid streams, just like Netflix, those are the ones that are getting the money. But you know what? They're generating a ton of money. Like, I think the majors just said they just hit $1 million a day. $1 million a day from Spotify. So that's
There's
not
some
bad.
things going on legally with Spotify right now too.
Oh, there's always a little going on. But the point is that as subscribers continue to grow, there's more money in the pot. And at some point, it might make some sense. But I totally agree on the freemium side, on the Pandora and the free Spotify. You're not going to make a living on that. But as the paid streaming grows, it's starting to get to the point where it's actually starting to make some sense. I mean, I've noticed on my own, I got about 1 million streams last year for Mythos, so I can track that and see where everything's going, and it's good money. It's fine. It's funny for me because I originally sold the CDs and then we sold it on iTunes as downloads, and now we're selling it again as streams. So I'm like, this is great. But for new artists who've never had the benefit of selling it on CDs, they will market it. Yeah.
So you're talking about, I made a note there, about
Yeah.
90% of your revenue is from live playing.
Well, if you're a recording artist, I mean, obviously, if you're a film composer or an engineer, that's not the case. I'm just
No.
talking about if you want to be a recording artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that explain why all these sort of 80s pop icons are hitting the road again?
Yes. and the majors, they're making money on the catalog, right? So if they get them out again, people start thinking, oh, I forgot about the Eagles. I want to listen to them again, right?
Right.
It revives people, but the money that these big artists, and the problem with that too, it's a problem for new artists. There's a lot of challenges to new artists with the new paradigm, because what's happened is going back to catalog artists, like they're dusting off, like, you remember the Eagles came out, they swore they would never play again, and now the checks just, like, the offer got bigger and bigger and bigger. That's why they had the Hell Freeze Over tour, right? Because that's what the deal was. They said, you know, and it got to the point where the police going out, or, you know, they just dust, like, the Stones, I mean, they must be 90 by now, right? They're out. Literally, I mean, how
But
much
the price of
right?
tickets too, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So if you're charging $250 a pop, or $300 or $500, or, you know, Elton John or whatever that is, the problem is someone might spend their entire year's music budget, live music budget, on that one show. Which means when they have a choice to go and see you for $20 at the Commodore, they might go, I already spent $500, I can't afford that.
There's a
So
music budget?
no, but no, in people's minds, like it's more of a notional budget. It's like they're not making a budget, but the point is that if they had money to spend and they've spent $500 on a ticket, are they going to spend any more on live music in the next 3 or 4 months? Probably not. And so that's the problem with new artists. They're getting burned by the established artists coming and basically sucking all the money out of the system, right? And it also makes it tougher for new, like, venues, right? I mean, it makes it tougher for venues to make money when people spend money to go into the big shows. So it is an issue, and it's a really good point too. And you're absolutely right. They're cashing in like hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, I mean, there's a reason why Chad Kroeger got a $75 million check from Live Nation. You know, it wasn't because of the recording; it was because of the lot. It was a lot. So, okay. Oh, and before I leave, a lot of people ask, how do I get an agent? Right? Well, this is the thing. I mean, obviously it's a catch-22, a bit of a chicken and egg thing, because, you know, to get some of the good shows, you need an agent. How do I get the good shows? I need an agent, I can't get an agent. Okay. So, what I always think of it this way, agents make their money as commission. They're commissioned, right? They get 10% of whatever you make. So if you're making $100 in a case of beer, they're only going to get $10 for picking up the phone. So their incentive to sign you is about 0.
I also get beer.
No, and you drank it because it was on your rider, and so they're pissed off that you drank it. So the point is, and now if your guarantees get up to 1,000 and they can make $100 a show, their ears are starting to perk up. If you're at 3,000, you know, the point is that you can totally earn your way into getting agents interested. I promise you, when you get to a certain stage, they're going to come out of the woodwork. I mean, I know Dear Rouge was one of our peak performance artists, and they were out at Canadian Music Week, and I swear to God, their showcase there, after they won, every agent and every manager in the whole country was in there, that room. Everybody. It was awesome, but it goes to show you know, they built it to a point, and then all of a sudden, it's like everybody was interested, right? So I know it seems like it sucks that that's the case. Some agents will get in early if they really love you, but for the most part, it's like selling cars, right? It's like, I'm not picking up the phone for $100, right? So,
But it is good to get an agent that loves you.
of course,
so they will
absolutely, and that's something you should aim towards. And sometimes with agents, you know what? Often they won't sign a contract. We never actually, in the 90s, I never actually signed any contract with Feldman, but Feldman was our agent for years, right? But the thing is that we just paid, like we booked our own dates, and we just paid Feldman their 10%. Pay the man, right?
But it looked good you had Felton.
Yeah, and the point is they got us some good dates, and they also stranded us in Thunder Bay too. Anyway, that's another story. Another way to get out there is showcasing. Breakout West is taking applications now, so if you are a singer-songwriter and you want to get out and play, Breakout West is a Western Canadian conference and music festival. A lot of music supervisors are there who sync, even if you're not playing, go. You can meet a bunch of awesome LA-based and New York-based supervisors and Toronto-based supervisors. Canadian Music Week is in Toronto. It's a bit bigger than Breakout West, but again, the whole industry's there. It's a great place to showcase and market. South by Southwest just got canceled because of the virus, which kind of sucked, but that's it's the nature of the world right now, but that's another really important festival. Folk Alliance, there's a bunch of genre-specific festivals and conferences. Folk Alliance is a good example. And international, I'll give an example. Reaper Bond, that's in Hamburg. There's another one called Big Sound in Brisbane, Australia. I've been to all of these, and they're all great. If you can get to them, it's fantastic. You just want to pick the right time to go in your career. You don't want to go too early. But they're all there, and it's a great way to find industry people. Okay. We talked about the website. One thing about social media, and I'll talk about social media in a minute, is the 80-20 rule. And so this is really important. So what I find with a lot of artists, it's like the only thing on their social media is buy my CD, come to my show, buy, sell. They're always selling. And the reality is that people don't go on social media to be sold to. They go there to see cats, basically. I mean, I don't know, what else do they go there for? I mean, I don't know. No, but it's like they go there for entertainment, they go there to engage with people, they see a post, they want to write about it, they want to be part of this big community. Really Facebook is about, grad reunions, it's about connecting with friends in the past. There's a whole bunch of things that social media is about, and it's not about them being sold to. So the 80-20 rule just says, just use some discipline. 80% engagement, 20% sales. So spend 80% of your time engaging your audience, pulling them in, having a dialogue. Like, I'll say something like, like on my Mythos thing, I'll go on the site and or my Facebook, and I'll just say, I'll put up a similar type of artist playlist and say, who's your favorite artist? And then we have this whole dialogue about it, and we're back and forth, and all the people who listen to us are talking about it. And then maybe, I'll do another one like that and take some pictures of me on a piano or something stupid like that. And then I'll say, oh, by the way, check out the new single, and put it up. And, so engage, then sell. Important, obviously, YouTube, very, 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 very important. Very important. So here's we talked about MySpace, rest in peace. YouTube, still the #1 place for discovering new music. 3 big ones, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Obviously with things like Snapchat, depending on your demographic, a lot of the younger generation on Snapchat, but that's kind of changing. I mean, this is the thing too, is it keeps evolving too, because I know Facebook is trying to take on some of and Instagram are trying to take on some of Snapchat's features and things like that. As far as your music, it's going to be on Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, Google Music, Amazon. Those are all the streaming services. I do suggest to people you can use Hootsuite or some service to sort of plan your social media, because if, let's say, you've got a day job or you're working hard, you can do everything on, let's say, Sunday night, have all your social media timed out for the whole week in advance, and have it timed so that it goes out in a certain way, and then you don't have to worry about it during the week. It's a good way to do it. If you can't do it all the time during the day, that's a really great way to do it. Somebody asked me about how do I get my music on Spotify or Apple Music. That's just through an aggregator, and so you can't go directly to Spotify. You have to go through an aggregator like CD Baby or TuneCore. There's other services out there. I have The Orchard. That's because I have a record label, and they only do deals with labels, but that's another aggregator. So if you want to get out, now the thing is, just because you can, doesn't mean you should. So it's easy to get a song, stick it on CD Baby, and it's on Spotify. The problem is it's 40 million tracks. Like, how are people going to know that? So you got to really think about, what's the plan? How am I going to get people to know about this? I can use my son's band, Rain City, as an example. They just they dropped a new video this week, and they spent 3 weeks building up to it, sending behind the scenes shots, talking about it, hyping people about it, getting everyone excited. So when it did finally drop, people were like excited. They couldn't wait for it. And when it dropped, there was a lot of eyeballs on it. But they spent a lot of time building up to that. So they thought it through. And they really did a good job, I thought, in building the hype. So you want to think about that, is how can you do that. Any questions? Yes?
You mentioned your own record label, Nathaniel Sash, that was his solution. Sash and he started his own record label.
Yeah.
Tired of going to everyone else. Do you think that's a good thing he did?
Well, there's a plus and a minus. You know, I mean, I've always had my own label, and the problem with doing it yourself is then you have to do everything.
Yeah.
You know, and if you have the skills to do it, sure, absolutely. You also got to think about financing too, because some of these things are quite expensive, and so some labels actually have, you know, good marketing budgets, and you can actually benefit from that. I know when I did the deal with Virgin, you know, they committed to a proper marketing budget internationally, which I could never afford, you know, and that was able to get it out. So it's sort of a plus and minus thing. You know, yes, you retain control, but do you have the resources? Do you have the staff? Do you have the radio trackers and the publicists and all this stuff? So I agree. You know, if you're a big artist, like certain artists have started their own labels because it's like, why am I giving away all this money to these guys who I can trade on my own notoriety? I'm the one who everybody knows. So it's you know, it's different if you're a new artist, because how are you going to get to that level, right? I benefited certainly from being on a label, but because I'm a lawyer, when I negotiated my deal, I didn't sign all my rights away. I did a license to Virgin so that I got everything back after 10 years when they didn't care, so that I was able to put it all out myself on my own label. But you know, if you're a new artist and you have to sign an artist deal, often that means you have no bargaining, and you sign a really crappy deal and you give everything away, and then 10 years later you're like, why did you let me sign that deal, Bob? And I'm like, sorry, we had no bargaining position, right? So there's so many variables to look at, but for all intents and purposes, you are your label until you have a label, so you might as well embrace it. Right?
But can't you just have a clause that after 5 years, either or you could just...
Oh, there's lots of things you can ask for.
Because some people just change their name of their bands.
Well, you can't. Yeah, most deals you sign personally, so it doesn't matter what the name of your band is. You're signing individually as well. Yeah. Nice try there.
You mentioned before releasing something to Spotify that basically hype it up to people to get them excited. Do you have any really good tips on how to actually do that?
Well, there's a couple of things about Spotify I should mention first. The big thing on Spotify is playlists. So if you can get on a playlist, especially a known playlist, that's going to really help. And there's different types of playlists on Spotify. There's the ones that you can make. There's the ones that other people make. There's the ones that are curated. Then there's editorial ones. So there's different types of playlists. Getting curated and getting picked by the editorial team there's a time. So when you put your song up for release, the period of time between when you've loaded it up and the time when it's actually released, Spotify for Artists will allow this. Everybody should, if you're an artist, should be on Spotify for Artists, because what will happen is the song will pop up on Spotify for Artists and you can ask Spotify to review it. Now the problem is, if you wait until the day that it's released, the day after that, they won't look at it anymore.
Yeah, I just found that out. I didn't know that
I know.
before now.
I'm not saying it makes sense, but I'm just telling you all now that you want to set your date for your release far enough away so that there's that period of time to allow Spotify to listen to it and curate it. Because if you can get on one of their editorial, like that's what I'm saying, if you can get on that, that's worth gold, right? If you can get an editorial playlist, awesome. Another thing to do is, now this is after its releases, is trying to get other artists that are similar to you to add it to their playlists. So I do a lot of that. I'm always on there looking for similar artists and saying, hey, do you mind adding my song to your playlist? And I have artists coming to me all the time, do you mind if you add me to your playlist? And there's a lot of that going on. And I usually, I'll add you if you add me. And, you can work with artists, right? Similar artists. One thing that's nice about Facebook and Instagram is that you can target market like really fine, like in a very fine way, right down to the genre and things like that. You can really, and the location and demographic and men, women, like you can really zero down. Now, sometimes it gets too specific and you can't, so you have to like tweak it a bit. But one thing you can do is to build hype is to use some of those marketing services, and it's not that expensive, quite frankly, to advertise on Facebook or Instagram. You can be really targeted. So I'd encourage you to try that and see if that works a bit before release. Obviously, if you can get out live and tell people, and certainly a series of posts leading up to it online is always helpful. On your website, you want to have maybe a countdown or something, build some hype that way. Press, like telling local press about it, that it's coming up. Depending on the press, they may or may not be interested, but I'll talk to you about press in a minute. But one of the things is there is press out there that will support independent artists. So you want to Beat Root or these kind of, there are magazines and newspapers and things that will support local artists. If you have a hook, like your local paper, for example. Let's say if you're in Surrey, is it Surrey Now? What is it? Surrey?
Yeah, it's Surrey Now.
They might support you. I know in Maple Ridge, my son put out an EP and Maple Ridge News put a whole page on it, right? But, so use your local papers. Definitely go to the papers that help independent artists. And there's also other sites too, like, that you can use, independent sites. You could be the Artist of the Week on Music BC. There's lots of things that you can do to try to, but you want to think about all these things in advance. So you're going to put something out, think of what can all the things that I can do from advertising to media, maybe even radio, like all the things that you can do leading up to that release. And maybe you want to think about having a video to go with it. And don't put the song out and then 6 months later put the video out. You want to delay the release and have the video, have everything working to one point, because otherwise it's all just diffused and it's all below the radar. But if you can get everything happening at the same time, you can pop up and people then will notice you, and then you can start a little snowball. Is that helpful? Or
Yeah.
Traditional media is going through some crazy changes right now. Stuart Jordan, who writes for The Province, he's the music critic. He does a blog, he does a whole bunch of articles every week in the music industry. I went to visit him at Pacific Press, and I walked into a room about this big, and floor to ceiling it was chairs. And I said, "What is this?" And he said, "Every one of those chairs had a journalist in it." And so that's the nature of print media right now. It's contracting like this, and people like Stuart, who used to do 5 articles a week, are now doing 25 articles a week. And so they don't have time. They don't have time. And when I talked about writing a great bio or writing, another part of media is writing a great press release. If you can write a killer press release, they're just going to copy and paste it. That's the best case scenario, is that you write a great press release. They don't have time to interview you. They just take it, boom. And that's media that if you had to put a dollar amount for, let's say, a quarter page in the Georgia Straight or in the Province or something like that, we're talking about thousands of dollars. So that earned media is huge, huge. So keep that in mind. So make their job easy, especially in print media, because they just don't have time. They don't have time. They're looking for stories. If you have something compelling to share it, and it can really do well for you. The other thing too is with radio, with magazines, with newspapers, with any of the traditional media, when you're an up-and-coming artist, they would love to be the person that discovered you. So what you'll find is a lot of times media are pretty friendly to up-and-coming artists. There's this sort of time when they're really friendly, and then when you become super famous, then knocking you down gets way more, press for them, way more, than when you're early. If they knock you down, they just look bad. So there's this nice sweet spot between when you're starting and when you're famous, when they might actually be nice to you, right? So take advantage of that and get to know them. And a lot of times, a lot of the media people will be out at shows, Stuart and other people, get to know them as people. And I do that with, like, Stuart's a friend of mine. If I have a release, I don't use it very often, but because I have a relationship, if I need something, I can phone, and I'm very careful about using that collateral, but when I need it, I can phone him and he'll help me. You know, like when I put out my book, he did a piece on it and he really helped me out. And I showed my appreciation, wrote a nice letter. You know, give back too. You know, show your appreciation because you know you can make friends in the media. CBC, Grant Lawrence, get to know Grant. Awesome guy. Absolutely no reason why at an event you couldn't just go talk to him, get to know him, and start a dialogue with him. It doesn't always have to. It's the same with social media. It's not always about, you know, write something about me. You know, talk about other artists. Talk about other things that are going on. Just get to know people. Find out what they like. You know, so get to know your media. The other thing about media is writing a great press release is really important and good. Learning how to do a good interview is also really a great skill. And what I find really interesting is artists that will get up, you know, punk rock artists that will get up and just like throw themselves around the stage and scream and shout and, you know, all this energy, and then interview, climb up, right? Because it's a skill that's different. Talking publicly is a different skill than singing on a, you know, it's different. So people, it seems counterintuitive. It should be natural for people who are natural on a mic to be able to go and do an interview, but it's not. So it's a skill that you need to learn. And one of the things that you need to learn is that no matter what interview you go into, that you need to know, you need to be prepared, and you need to know exactly what message you want to get out to the audience. So I always like to think there should be 3 things in any interview that you should be ready to say. So we've got a new single coming out, we've got a tour, and a bass player just had a baby, or whatever that is. Like whatever those bits that you really want to share. And it doesn't matter what they ask you, you can always pivot to what you need. It's a good politician's trick, right? You always answer what you want to say. Of course, I never do that. I always talk the truth, right? And it's like, no. That's a joke. Anyway, the thing is, though, you can always pivot to what you need. So let's say, well, I'm going to show this to you. And this is a band called Sigaros. It's a wonderful Icelandic band. To this day, Grant Lawrence played this to me years ago, and I have yet to find an interview that's this bad. This is one of the worst. This is the worst interview I've ever seen. And the reason I keep playing it is because I haven't found one that matches this in terms of its ability to come up with things that are gone wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it for you, and I'd like you to tell me, or think about while you're watching it, what things they're doing wrong, what things they could do better, and especially some of the things I led into it.
Sigaros is Jon Bergersen on guitars and vocals, Kjartan Svensson on keyboards, Oripal Bjarsan on drums, and Georg Holm on bass. How did I do with those names, guys?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you start out playing this kind of music, or did you start out as a more, people might think, regular sounding band, and then did you kind of go here as you experimented?
I think we probably just started out playing like this.
I mean, what was the first time that you guys sat down with your instruments and started playing? Did you have this thought, we want to create this very specific kind of music? Because the stuff that you make doesn't sound like a lot of other stuff that's out there. Or did you get to that right away?
Yeah, I think we probably did. Don't think we didn't sit down and talk about, we want to play this type of music or something. It just happened naturally.
And how do you guys create a song?
We just sit down and create the song.
Does one person start playing one instrument and then everyone else starts to kind of add into that?
Yeah, kind of.
Did you think you would be the kind of band that sold 2 million records?
I don't think we don't really expect anything, so why not?
What did you guys, obviously at some point you decided to get in the same room and start playing music with each other. What was the motivation? You just wanted to make music?
Yeah. Basically, want to make music.
Could you have ever imagined, though, that it would become this sort of big phenomenon that it's become?
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't think we really expect anything. We're just playing music. Anything happens. Always good, whatever it is.
Are you enjoying life as a successful band?
All right, enough of that. So that's halfway, okay? That's a 5-minute and 50-second interview. So, what do they do wrong? Any ideas? Yes.
And they all know the questions.
Okay. Yep. Anything else?
I was gonna say they weren't prepared and,
Not
and
prepared?
maybe to discuss like who's gonna be the key point person, the speaker.
So, who's supposed to be
So
the
there's no
speaker?
dead air between
One
question
of the
and
things
answer.
that most media people will tell you is you don't need the whole band in there. In fact, it's not a good idea to have the whole band in the control room. It'd be much better in the studio. I mean, have maybe one or two of the band there, and then the other guys can be in the control room waving or something. Because what happens in radio, you notice with them, they're looking at each other, seeing who's going to answer, and then there's dead airspace, which is death for radio, is dead airspace, right? So these long pauses before someone answers, it's like, that's the worst thing on radio, you can imagine. Yeah.
There was absolutely no enthusiasm
No
or
enthusiasm?
passion behind
Yep.
what they were saying
Yep.
to other music. or-
Absolutely, no
Yeah.
passion.
No identity.
No identity, yep.
There might have been a bit of a language barrier too, so.
Yeah, to be fair, there is probably a language barrier,
So
and so we don't want to make too much fun of it because of that, but I think they knew enough to be able to answer the
The
questions.
interviewer was asking closed questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really? Okay, excellent, and that's one of the things. The interviewer was not helpful because the questions were not good questions. So, in that circumstance, if you're in a situation, and this is part of going back to journalists not having enough time, you're going to run into a situation where they haven't done their research, they don't know anything about you, and they're asking stupid questions, really. Stupid closed questions that the answer is yes or no. I mean, never answer yes or no without something to add to it, because that's what they were doing. Yes. No. But that's a really good opportunity to pivot. If someone, for example, he asked a very open-ended question. When you write a song, what do you write about? And if one of your things we're putting out a new single, you could immediately pivot to, that's an excellent question. And a really good example of that is our new single that's coming out tomorrow. It's like, and you can go right into that and explain the origins of the single and what happened and get excited about it and show some passion. So whatever they ask, you can definitely move to what you need. So again, always know what you want to say, have 2 or 3 things, and nothing wrong with repeating. It's fine. You don't want to overdo it, but it's fine. And show some enthusiasm, show some passion, and don't do one-word answers. Don't have the whole band in there. So anything else you guys can think of?
Well,
Yep.
I mean, I don't know in this case, but I know in some cases they might have like an opportunity to do an acoustic sample of their music or something like that in the interview. But I was going to say, regardless if they don't know the interviewer's questions, they can kind of prepare ahead of time of like what kinds of questions might come up, or at least have a story to fill in the gaps around like how the song came to be
Good.
or whatever.
Absolutely good. And you find with really good artists, they always have compelling stories to tell, and there's always something exciting they can tell about what they're doing. It's always something. What's that?
On the way to the floor.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's so many. Once you get out on the road too, I mean, it's just an endless story. Just things happen, and when you're on the road, it's just like this endless supply of stories you can tell. Yes.
To be fair, they're fairly introverted as a band.
Yeah.
Music primarily just showed on CSI.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, we don't want to be too hard on them. I use this as an example.
I'm not cutting them down.
No, but
It's a horrible interview.
There's a lot of things that, yes, there's a language issue. Yes, their music is very introspective, and yes, there's things that lend themselves to being like that in an interview. But it's just such a great example of what not to do in an interview, So I can't help myself. But you're absolutely right. I mean, you have to also look at the band. You notice this with some artists too. They wear their sunglasses and they sit back and they look all cool, and maybe that's their image. But how does that come across to people? I mean, I think most people just think they're arrogant or aloof, and maybe it works for some artists, that's their shtick. You know, you think of Oasis or something like that. I mean, their whole shtick was being like that, right? But I'm not sure that's helpful in the long run, because you don't make friends that way. Anything else you can think of? All right.
I do
Yeah.
like the pass off where somebody asks the question, you go, well, this is what I think about songwriting, but Bill, our bass player, could certainly elaborate on that.
Right.
Moving it around the table.
You
getting
could, you
everybody-
can steer it. I mean, the point is, you once you develop skills as a doing interviews, you can definitely learn to pivot, to steer it in a way. You know, you should always have stories ready to go. It's sort of like, I always say this to bands, technical issues are always going to happen. Always. Like, you know, they don't happen every gig, but it inevitably something's going to happen. The power is going to go out. Your guitar is going to unplug. Some stuff happens on stage. So if something happens like that, have a plan. Have a plan. What are you going to do? What are you going to do as a band? I know this one band. It was just the best thing ever. The power went out in the whole venue at the Red Room. They just unplugged everything, went in the middle, and played an acoustic set in a circle with
They
everybody.
did that.
They didn't stop. They just picked up their guitar. It was like nearly automatic, and they just did that, and it was just awesome. In fact, people will remember that forever, right?
We finished the play, the technical director turned the emergency lights on the stage.
See,
And
you can turn adversity into something that's a moment that people will remember. So think about it. You think there's always going to be these technical things. Plan, and I think that's to talk about confidence. You can have that if you have a plan. You know, you can always do that. Okay, let's go do it. You know, so it's the same with interviews. Is being prepared, and this is the thing. It's not something that everyone is comfortable with as an artist. The best thing you can do is prepare. Because if you're prepared, you can be more confident. So, all right. Anyway,
Evolution.
devolution.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. So this is getting. Now we spent a lot of time on the creative side and the marketing side, but this is something that is the hardest part for any artist is treating your music as a business, because most artists I know are musicians because they didn't want to go to business school, right? They didn't want to become a lawyer. They wanted to play music. And so now I'm telling you, well, actually, you've got to really treat this as a business, because it is a business. So you have to be really careful with that and really embrace it. I know that's hard. So one of the things you can do is join your music industry association. If you're not a member of Music BC, join it. What that'll do is it'll put you in touch with what industry events are going on, what networking events, what showcases are happening, funding applications. It gets you into sort of the community and allows you to see what's going on. So I encourage everyone to do that. If you're a band, have a band agreement. We talked briefly about that, but one of the biggest things, aside from the songs, is the name. So if you're in a band with 5 people and you have a name for the band, and you don't have a band agreement, and someone leaves, what happens to the name? Well, that person has, as a partnership, has just as much a right to the name as the other 4. So that person says, we can't use the name anymore. Well, now you're in a lawsuit. So in a band agreement, you could say, if you leave the band, you leave the name behind. And the name, the trademark, the trade name, that's so important. You think about a band. I remember this band, Yes. Members kept leaving. The last member was Chris Squire, and he's the bass player. And then what happened is, the original guys, Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe, wanted to go out on the road as Yes, and Chris said no. So they went out as Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe. And to me, that sounded more like a law firm than a band. And then so did most people. So they couldn't even fill small auditoriums. And then 2 years later, Chris went out with, Trevor Rabin and everybody as Yes. Same songs, filling out auditoriums again. Because the power in the name, right? Well, yes, but the point is that there is power in the name. You think about AC/DC. I mean, how valuable that is, or KISS. I mean, these are multi-million-dollar enterprises, and so protect your name. So that's why having agreements is important. Things like the name, things like songwriting, split of revenues, and things like that. Another thing about your business is going after funding. Factor. In BC, we have Amplify BC. We also, there's other funding if you're in the art side of things, there's BC Arts Council or Canada Council. So there are funds out there. And there's other things that you can do. I just had one client who just, it was amazing. They raised, I can't say how much money, but it was a lot from an investor. And they're finished their record, new band, and they've got 30 dates in Germany right now. Their song went up the charts right away. You know, it's like they were able to go out and make this amazing business case to this investor, and they're doing really well. So it can be done, but you have to be savvy. And so,
can I
yes,
ask you a question about
of course.
funding? Is there a strategy to getting funding in terms of the way you write your application, what kind of stuff you have before you apply? Do
Yes.
I need to have the song in this?
Yes.
Yep, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. I think the thing with any funding application is everything I talked about before this will help you with your funding application. So if you have, like, if you think about Factor now, when they look at artist profiles, they're looking at your social media numbers. They're looking at the number of likes you have. They're looking at how many streams you have. They're looking at your YouTube. They're looking at your website. They're looking at all of those things. So if everything is awesome, you're basically putting yourself in the top 10%. You know, then it's competition. But I would say 90% of the artists don't have all this stuff together. So you really do yourself a favor if you have all the songs and the music and your social media and your website and all that's dialed in, a great live show, and it's all there. You're doing yourself a favor in terms of accessing funding. You know, you really are. And it makes it a lot easier. Right?
Is there kind of like a ballpark number that they're looking for in terms of like following and stuff like that, or?
Well, with Factor, they have different levels.
Okay.
I think it's 95%. Most artists are general, just that level 1 or whatever it is. To get into the next levels, you have to hit some pretty significant targets on your live performances and your revenues and stuff like that. So it's probably a ways down the line. Most artists are general. There will be a point though when you're making enough money that you'll pop into the sort of direct board approval where you don't have to send in demos and that kind of stuff. But you know, you just keep always updating your artist profile on Factor every 6 months, and then when they review them, you never know, it might pop up to the next level. That's what the hope is. And then you have much easier access to those bigger funds of money. Yes?
How do you find local funding resources?
Well, as I said, join Music BC, because they have a list every month of everything that's all the funding grants that are out there. As I said, they have microgrants, and microgrants are more for showcasing and things like that, but there's Amazon BC where you can go for recording and marketing. Factor has a $2,000 artist development fund that you can go after, and that's not as hard to get as the bigger money. So yeah, my feeling on funding is apply. You know, just always apply. Always try to get better, and eventually it'll happen. But just because you get turned down once doesn't mean that you should stop applying. That's no. Just keep applying, keep getting better, and you will get the money eventually. It's just, it can be frustrating because I've had people apply for years and nothing, and then all of a sudden they get it, you know? So don't give up, just keep trying. Yeah.
So I actually applied for Factor and was unsuccessful. One of the things they said, like they were really positive about the music, but one of the things that they said was regarding my social media, it was basically weak and not enough posts with what they said. They didn't say you should be posting X amount of times a day or whatever. They just said not enough posts. So my question would be, A, like how many, is there a figure that you should be aiming for? And B, other than like the obvious, like, hey, I'm in the studio recording my new single and you know, all that stuff, or I'm on tour or whatever, what else should you be posting about?
Well, that depends on the artist. I mean, some artists go so far as to share what they're having for breakfast.
Yeah.
You know? It depends well, it's true. I mean, how much you want to share of your personal life is a choice. I would suggest find your comfort zone and stay within that. As a rule of thumb, you should be posting every day on Facebook if you're using Facebook, and if you're using Twitter, you should be posting multiple times a day. Instagram, if you can do, you know, once a day or once a week, you know, it really depends. But keep in mind, it doesn't always have to be you and your pictures. That's the point. It's about engagement. So you can post about anything. Like, and one of the things that people will do is on a social media plan is every day can be for something different, like Throwback Thursday. You know, that's kind of, a lot of people do that, but why not you? Like, so you could have something that you did last year or 2 years ago, or you celebrate something every Thursday. You do that. It's just that people look forward to it because you do that, or you know, something on Mondays. You always talk about something you're doing in the community. You know, like let's say you're really into working at the SPCA on your spare time or something. You know, talk about it. You know, people will be interested in you as an artist if they know that you're a compassionate human being. You know, so maybe you do that on Mondays. And so you think about a strategy and then just hit it. And it doesn't, like I said, always have to be about buy, or come to my show, or do this. It doesn't. It really doesn't. It's about engaging with your fans, and you can talk to them about what they like to hear, or you could. You know, sometimes I've seen people post, I'm in the studio, I'm playing something. What do you think? You know, I always put a question mark. I always ask a question at the end of every post. Like, I always ask, because if you don't, what are you asking for? You want to engage people, so ask a question. What's your favorite color? You know, I mean, you know. But if you don't ask a question, people don't know to reply. So I mean, I think it's always good to encourage the people following you or liking you to make a post. And then the nice thing is the way the algorithms work on Facebook. The more likes and comments you get, the higher your numbers go. So that you want to encourage people. There's some people that are brilliant at it. They all they do is ask questions, and just a big dialogue. You know, it's fun. People like to, you know, talk about it. What's that? There's that Musicians United. Have you seen that one? There's so many people on that, and every post is basically just a really cool quote about music, and then people talk about it. Well, you can share that and talk about it. You know, you can share other people's posts too. So there's a ton you can do. Another thing I would look at other artists who are in your genre and see what they're doing.
I was going to say, I'm a fan of Jen Arden.
Yep.
She'll walk with her dog for
Well, she's
20
hilarious.
minutes, and
Jan's hilarious.
hundreds of us girls write back to her about the dog.
Like Jan is,
Just goes
well,
on and on.
she's a comedian to start with. Like, she's very
But
funny.
even before she had her TV show, we
Yeah.
all loved her.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course.
You know, she showed her vulnerable side.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But that's the thing, is how far you want to go into your personal life, and you know, that's a you know, once you go down that rabbit hole, it's hard to come back, because then people expect it, and then if you stop doing it, it's like, oh, you're not doing your social media anymore, you know. And that's something people say, well, can someone else do my social media? I don't want to do it. And it's like, well, no, you got to do your own social media, because if someone else is doing it, they're not going to connect the way that you can. So unfortunately, until you get super famous and then someone can help you with it, but you're still going to have to be involved in it. You know, you can't just delegate it off, because people expect the personal connection. That's what it is. Okay. Anything else? Yes, sir.
In regards to band name songwriting split,
Yes.
do you have anything in your book about copyright and publishing for Canadian writers?
Yes. There's a whole section. Yeah. Okay, so part of the business is planning. So Richard Branson started Virgin Records back in the 70s with Tubular Bells, Mike Oldfield, instrumental, sold 1 million records. Crazy. I mean, Richard Branson, the business has to be involving, it has to be fun, and it has to exercise your creative instincts. And the thing I take out of that is the creative instincts part. I don't know if you've ever seen Richard Branson, but he always seems to be having fun. If he's doing Virgin Galactic or his trains or whatever he's doing, he's always just so passionate about what he's doing. He seriously enjoys it, and he seems that he pull on all this creativity, and he's a real impresario in that way. But I always think about the creativity that goes into all the things he does. He thinks way outside the box. And so I encourage artists to use the same creativity that they have in their music and their creation in their marketing. And if you look at bands that do really compelling marketing plans, they're often very much tied into their own brand. And that's really helpful. If you're doing fun contests around your shows, or you know, you're always engaging in fun marketing things. I mean, one thing we did back in the day is, you know, Rhymes with Orange. We would, every Christmas, we'd send boxes of mandarin oranges to all the A&R guys. Or, you know, we'd, you know, or we'd send those little orange chocolate things, or we did wrapping paper, our own wrapping paper for presents. So we'd send our cassettes in wrapping paper with bows and stuff. No, but I was at CMW one year, and an A&R guy from Universal said, "Okay, you people out there, which demo would you listen to?" And he had put up one tape, and then he held our tape up, and it's like, this one, right? Because it had showed a little, I don't know, something more than your average sort of sending a tape out with a picture, So the point is that you can think about the creativity and put that into your merchandise, put it into your videos, put it into your posts, put it into everything. And you can really, if you're in a band, have band meetings where you just talk about nothing else but cool creative ideas for marketing. Why not? Have fun with it. It can be fun, I've seen bands have a blast with it. There's no reason why it has to be stuffy and boring. In fact, I think you're going to engage with your fans a lot more if you can tie your marketing in with who you are and make it really compelling and interesting. Okay? Alrighty. Second one. I feel like that luck is preparation meeting opportunity. Oprah Winfrey. I'm a big believer in this industry that you make your own luck. What I mean by that is, there's a lot of people that just say, I'm just not lucky. This artist is really lucky and this artist is really lucky. I'm just not lucky. But then when I look at what they're doing on a daily basis, they're not creating the opportunity to have that luck. And if you think of, let's say, Carly Rae Jepsen, sure, she was lucky that Justin Bieber tweeted out, "Call me maybe," to his fans. Okay? Yes, she was lucky. But she worked for 10 years to get to that point. Like, I met her when she was 15. She was in her mid-20s by the time that hit, and she had been working and working and working and working, doing television, doing everything she could to move forward as an artist. So when that hit, she was ready. So, in fact, within a few months, she's on award shows, and all of a sudden she's went from here to there, biggest song in the world in 2012. But I believe that was a sort of Oprah Winfrey moment, where she had worked extremely hard to create a situation, an opportunity, where luck could strike and she could have the goods to be able to capitalize on that. Because a lot of us wouldn't be ready for what happened to her in that moment. So I think that's important. And also with plans, Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? So when I talk about plans, I think it's very important to look at the plan not as something that's stuck, that it's goals, it's affirmational, it's trying to go towards something, but you're not so married to it that you don't take on opportunity that may come in over here because it's not in the plan. So I think plans need to evolve and plans need to progress, and you can do a plan for a video release, you can do a big plan for the next 5 years, you can just plan, but I suggest write it down, talk about it with whoever you're working with, really think through all the different bits, whether that's the songwriting and the recording and the touring and the videos and the social media and all that. Just you need to plan all that. And so when you do put something out, it's not just rushed out, because the typical artist situation is if you could put it out the second that you finished mixing it, you would. You would, because you want to share it with the world, right? I resist that temptation with all of your might, because that's what the artist wants to do. The label in you, the manager in you, the business side of you is going to say, no. Let's think about this for a second. How can we best put it out? Not how can we put it out. How can we make it so that it's going to have the most impact? And that means we got to think about social and video and media and radio and all the other things. Okay? So there you go. Plan for your success.
For a quick question about that. Do you have any strategies on, after you release a song, obviously, if you're building up for, say, a month and a half, 2 months to release a song, day release comes, big explosion, everybody's liking it, commenting, blah, blah, blah. How do you keep it relevant after the release? Because, if hypothetically it's just a single that you maybe want to try and milk for as long as you can when the next single comes out.
Well, luckily, if you've got radio, that'll help you, and you want to try to keep the radio tracker or whoever, or you on the radio to try to keep it going. As we talk about playlists, you can work really hard to get it on as many playlists as possible. So after it comes out, just work it like crazy to try to get it on playlists. Obviously, if you have a video, you can start marketing the video, like put it on Facebook or like YouTube and market it through YouTube, or One thing you should do is put the video on Facebook as well. And the reason for that is the algorithms. The problem is if you put it on YouTube and you advertise or you link from Facebook to YouTube, the algorithm will go like this. It'll stop it from people seeing it. But if you put the video on Facebook and then you put it out, the algorithm will actually push it more. So you want it in both places. The only problem, of course, then you're splitting views, the numbers. But if you want to promote it, I encourage you to put it on both platforms. And that's another way. And the thing about that is you can have a long tail ad for Facebook, over 30 days, and it just keeps popping up, on people's feeds, and just keep. Because the thing is, with any kind of marketing, it's about repetition. Someone may see something once and it's just gone. They see it twice and whatever. They see it the third time and then, oh yeah, well, I remember that. And then, so it is important. Repetition is important.
One thing I've noticed some artists doing now is they're sharing their songs into Facebook groups, like Metal BC
Right.
or Punk Rock
Yep.
BC.
Yep.
Sometimes it can look a little bit spammy if you, as an individual, follow a bunch of different groups. But I'm curious on your opinion on that strategy.
Well, I don't think so. I think it's important to follow the groups. I just think that you don't want to abuse it.
Sure.
Again, it's about participation. So if you're in a group, if every time you're on the group you're pushing your own stuff, then that looks spammy. But if you're on the group and you're engaging with everyone else and being a good group member, and actually not abusing that, when you do put yours up, you'll find those people are far more receptive. Right?
Yep.
80-20. 80-20. 80-20. Okay? Okie doke. Moving right along. Every revenue stream. Okay, so this is where it gets complicated. As I said, for most recording artists, 90% of their revenue is going to come from live, from merchandise, from their live performance guarantees. But they often say the recording industry is an industry of pennies, because it's about royalties from a bunch of different pots all over the place. And so there's money that comes from recording, there's money that comes from songwriting, there's money that comes from merchandising and live. So these are all areas. So I'm going to go briefly into some of these areas. So it might seem a little daunting, and I get into this a little bit more in the book, but I just wanted to give you an overview of some of the resources. So one of them, of course, is your songs. So I'll come back to that, but part of the revenue is going to come from SOCAN, from public performance. Some is going to come from sync deals, if you do a film deal. Live performance, of course, you get your guarantees. Merchandise, at sales and online. Sponsorships and endorsements, like Roland or whoever. You might not get cash, but if you get gear or you get discounted gear, that's helpful. Money you don't spend is money you earn. New online revenues, there's things like crowdsource funding and things like that. They're getting kind of saturated these days. It's a lot harder than it used to be to go after some sort of funding there. But it's there, it's available. Of course, sound recording, selling CDs still, or vinyl, or downloads, or streaming. And then master use licensing, which is the other half of the film deal. I'll get to that in a minute. And then neighboring rights. And a lot of people get confused about neighboring rights. So I'll just take a moment to explain what that is. So 20 years ago, the Copyright Act was changed so that there's a copyright in the performance that is also, it's tied to the recording. So you have your recording copyright, you have your performance copyright. So the performers on a record can actually get royalties in Canada from radio play. So the songwriters get royalties, but so do the performers. The neighboring right is the sound recording gets some money and the performer gets some money. And in Canada, what they did is they divided it up so that Connect Music deals with the labels and MROC or RACS deals with the performers. So if you have a song that you are, as the artist, and the performer and the songwriter, you need to register with SOCAN if you're on the radio, but you also need to register as the performer with MROC or RACS. And because they divided it in half, if you're also own the sound recording, you're the label, you also register with Connect Music to get that. So royalty from SOCAN as the songwriter, royalty as the record label or owner of the sound recording is one of the neighboring, half of the neighboring rights, and the other half of neighboring rights is royalty as a performer. Now, neighboring rights is broader in Canada than it is in the U.S. The U.S. there is neighboring rights, but it's limited to digital and satellite. But it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. I think they're close to $1 billion now through Sound Exchange. And what happens is in the States, now you can register in Canada and they will collect through Sound Exchange for you. You don't have to register with Sound Exchange. However, if you're getting a ton of action in the States, I would strongly suggest having a direct relationship with Sound Exchange, because if it has to go through Connect Music, 6 months, a year will go by, and it goes through, having to go through all the different mechanisms, all that, and MIN. So it's a little bit harder to register directly with Sound Exchange because you need a tax number with the IRS. A little bit complicated. It's doable, it's just annoying. So, neighboring rights, I know it's a little confusing, but again, this is a game of pennies, right? So you got your live performance, your song, your SoCan, you got neighboring rights, you got sound recordings, sponsors. This all adds up. So, I'm sure there's questions, but yes.
So with the registering as a performer, like I've got a bunch of songs that I've played on that I was just paid like straight up for.
Okay,
yeah.
Good question. In Canada, as a side player, there's a pot for the side players which is less than the featured players, but in Canada you get paid as a side performer. Unfortunately, in the States, only the featured performers get paid, which is a shame, really. But all the side players don't get paid through Sound Exchange.
But it's still worth registering.
Definitely worth registering. Like I have a buddy, Mark LaFrance, who sang on like Motley Crue and AC/DC and Bon Jovi and all these back in the 80s. He was like the poster child for neighboring rights because he sang on all those tracks that were being released in Canada, like played all the time on rock radio, and yeah, his checks are pretty good.
Just kind of build off of this then. So say he's played on a record, how does that get traced back to him? If he doesn't,
you have to register.
You have to register, and then when whoever uploads a song to the internet or
well, it would be radio. It'd be radio, right? So basically, it would be triggered. They track, like they actually track which songs are played on the radio, just like SoCan.
Right.
And that would filter down to you as the performer because you've registered on that track.
So that's
right.
Right? Makes sense?
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Okay. Yes. Oh,
How does Resound fit into all of that?
Resound is on top. So basically, all the money flows into Resound, and then Resound pays to Connect Music for the labels and MROC and Rax for the performers. But they're the sort of on top of it all. They don't actually distribute directly. Great question. So, drilling down a bit. So, copyright in a song. So I had a question, how do you copyright a song? Well, copyright's automatic when it's in a physical form. So as soon as you record it or put it in a chart, write it down, it's copywritten. The question, of course, is how do you prove that? So, it's important to, if you have a recording that it's date stamped and witnesses are always helpful. If you're not just alone in the studio, it's always good to have somebody who's actually heard it at that time, that it was in a tangible form. There is a registration in Canada through the Copyright Office. Unfortunately, it's only the title of the song, which is tough. So again, how do you prove if it's just the title? Whereas the U.S. Library of Congress, you actually register the track, and you actually they actually register it. The nice thing about the Library of Congress is it's not that expensive. You can do a whole record at the same time, and you can actually do the sound recording and the song at the same time. And the nice thing is, if somebody infringes upon your copyright in the States, if you register with the Library of Congress, you can sue them for what are called punitive damages, which are a lot higher damages than the regular ones. So I do encourage people, once it's done, once you're at the release stage, to register with the Library of Congress.
Even if you're in Canada?
Yeah, even if you're in Canada.
Okay.
You can, like I said, register in Canada, but it's unfortunately it's not as robust a system in Canada. So I'm not sure how useful
the Canadian one?
Yeah, it's through the Copyright Office in Ottawa, but the problem is you only register the title. So then the question is, okay, there's no copyright in the title. So I'm not sure at the end of the day how valuable that is. It's evidence that you registered a song with that title. Okay, if you play the song, like, how do you prove it's that
You
song?
mail it to yourself and you take it.
Well, that hasn't proven to work. 'Cause be tampered with and stuff. Yes?
By doing it with the Library of Congress, can that hold its ground in Canada as well?
I think it would be good evidence that a copyright's being filed. I mean, you would have to test that. But the chances are that the bigger damages would be in the States. Canada's much smaller anyway, so where would be worthwhile to fight it would be if something happened in the States, because it's 10 times bigger and there's 10 times more money, you know.
At least it's a record.
Yes, absolutely. But copyright's automatic when it's in a form, a tangible form, so you don't have to register it. Copyright's automatic. So you have a song. What can you do? So now you have these rights. You have a bundle of rights, and one of those is public performance royalties. So what you do is you sign those over to SOCAN, and then they collect them for you. So anything that happens in radio, television, live, like if you play live and your ticket, I think it's $7 or $6, you can file your songs with SOCAN, and SOCAN will pay you for playing your own songs
It
live.
has to be a ticketed event.
It has to be a ticketed event, and you have to file the live notice or you won't get paid. So it's very common for artists to not file the paperwork and not get paid, even big artists. They're always getting called out. Reproduction rights, so we talked about that. If you get a film deal, you're going to be doing what's called a synchronization license. So they pay you upfront to license your track as a songwriter, and that's called a synchronization license. It can be anywhere from $0 for a student. That was weird. That's all right. It can be like $0 for a student film, up to, depending, you know, David Bowie, you know, whatever, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And most of the time with most U.S., let's say television, like network television, you might be getting like $5,000 or $2,500. It really depends on the show. So, so that's important. Sheet music, less money available now, but it's still something that you can generate money. And grand rights are interesting. That's if, let's say, Cirque du Soleil uses your music. They would license it under a grand right license, and then you get paid based on every ticket sale. So there's these different rights. Is there lights gone, or are they?
You can't bring it back.
The lights are gone forever?
I think at a certain hour we
just lose the light?
we lose some.
That's interesting. Okay, so sound recordings. Again, this is another copyright. So copyright in the sound recording. It's important to know that neighboring rights is related to that. But obviously sound recordings, sales, CD sales, streaming, master use licenses, the other side of the film deal. So as a songwriter, you get a license, but you also have a master use license. So if you own the sound recording, hey, the sound recording, you get a license for that as well. So they have to clear both sides. So that's why it's really great if you can go to a music supervisor and say, hey, I can clear the master and the song. They like that. I love independent artists because you can clear the master and the song, and it's called one stop. And they love that. So that actually makes it really attractive for you as an independent artist to go to a music supervisor who put the music in film and television, because you can clear all the rights really easily. The worst thing for them is they have to deal with Warner Chappell or Sony Publishing. Firstly, they don't get calls back, and secondly, the price goes way up, you know? So they love dealing with independent artists. So it's an advantage, actually. So those are those streams. So lastly in this, making a career is about perseverance. I told you about Carly Rae Jepsen, the 10-year overnight success story. There's lots of examples of that. I think Huey Lewis in the News was a 15-year overnight success story, right? And there's so many examples of people that, you know, it's a long game. I'm not going to lie to you. It's possible that lightning can strike early, and fantastic if it does, but the reality is it's a long haul. It takes, you know, baby steps, and as long as you're always moving forward and moving up, then you just keep going and just don't stop. And there's going to be a lot of things that are going to get thrown in your face, like you get married, you have children, you have to pay a mortgage, you know, your health changes. I mean, there's so many things. Somebody leaves the band. Somebody in the band has a baby. You know, it's like there's so many things that can throw roadblocks up. But I've got to say, the artists that can have the talent and have the perseverance, certainly the ones that tend to get ahead. So on this section too, I just wanted to say one sort of last bit on this section, and that is be nice to everyone. And a good example of that to me is when I started in Rhymes with Orange, we had distribution through A&M Records, which became Universal. At that time, the guy who worked in the stock room, the orders weren't going out, and we were getting frustrated. So, we could have maybe treated him badly, and maybe yelled at him or done that, but we didn't. We worked through the issue, and we actually became friends. And over time, that same person moved up the ranks at Universal, eventually becoming A&R, which is the artist that signed people. And as a lawyer, I was sending him demos, and we were doing deals, and it was great. And eventually, he became the vice president of Universal in Canada, and that's Alan Reed, great friend of mine. Now he's moved over and he's running the Juno Awards, and now I'm in MLA, and we were there on the red carpet together, and it's just, we're still buddies. Our roles have changed, but the point is that the people that you know now that are starting in the industry are going to grow with you, So, and as you go up, the world becomes smaller and smaller in the music industry because there's not that many players who can make a real impact on your career. It's quite small, so it doesn't seem like that. It seems massive right now, but the more you're in the industry, you realize it gets smaller and smaller. So I'm just, be nice to them. That's good advice. So that's, those are sort of 12 steps that I think are important for success. What I can encourage everyone to do is look at all of them and maybe just rank where you are. Just go through everything. Just do sort of an analysis of, where are my songs? Where's my recordings? Where am I on my live performance? Just go through, where are we with social media? Factor is getting back to you and saying you need to improve that. Well, maybe improve it, do better, and look at all those things, because I think if you do all of these things, what you're doing is you're just setting yourself up for success. If one of these things is not there at all, there's a really good chance that things aren't going to go as well as they could. Like if you could have the best songs in the world, if your live show is terrible, it's going to be very difficult for you to, grow in the industry. So you're going to have to put that work in and make that show get better. And same thing, you could have the best songs in the world and your promo materials are terrible. Well, you're not doing yourself a favor when it comes to funding or the press or anyone else. So what I'd like to say is if you can get all these things 10 out of 10, I think a good example is like Dear Rouge. They did this. I swear, they just every single thing when they were an independent artist, they hit 10 out of 10. Like just blow your mind. It was that band. Like how they hit everything. They 110. They just overdid everything, and they did really well, and they're doing really well. And that's just one example of an artist that kind of got it. So that's the first part of the book. We're not going to get to the second part because we only have maybe a half hour left. But what I thought we would do is, instead of going through the whole second half, I'll just maybe tell you a few things about how to, the different relationships there are in the music industry. And on the back of the book here is sort of just you can't really see it, but there's sort of a list of the team players, and I'll go through those. And some of those team players include a manager, an agent, a label, a publisher, a lawyer, a radio tracker. There's all these different people that you can surround yourself with. And they all have different deals, and they all come in at different stages. So often, one of the first people or companies that get involved is a manager. It's hard to get a manager, but often managers come before the record deal. Sometimes the record deal comes and then the manager comes, but often a good manager, what their role is to actually build your team. That's what they do, and then manage it. The problem, of course, is if you don't have anything to manage, why would a manager want to manage it? So it's kind of like the agent situation. Most managers get between 15 and 25% of whatever you earn. So if you're not earning anything, it's really difficult for them to justify spending time being your manager. So if you can get yourself to a certain point where you know, they see that potential and you're making enough that it's worthwhile for them to get involved, there's a much better chance that you're going to get a manager. That's why getting all of these things together, you're way more attractive in this market to a manager than if you're like waiting for someone to save you. If you're waiting for someone to save you or create all of this stuff, I think you're going to be just waiting and waiting. Nothing's going to happen, right? So again, you gotta have to sort of embrace all of these things. And it doesn't matter if you're an engineer or you want to write for film and television, or you're a producer, or a singer-songwriter, or a recording artist, or any of those. I mean, all of these things are the same. You've got to rise above. You've got to be. There's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of people who want to be artists. So how do you do that? And so, getting a manager. I talked to Bruce Allen about that. I said, well, how did you sign your artists? And he says, you know, talent and drive were the two things. He said when Bryan Adams came to him, it was a clear talent, but he wouldn't leave his office until he met with him. Like he literally camped out at Bruce Allen's office when he was a kid, like 19, or he just wouldn't leave. Bruce was like, go home, kid. No, I'm not leaving. You're gonna, you know. He was just had this drive, right? And if you look at a lot of the big artists out there, they have that drive. You know, Madonna had that drive. Coldplay. I mean, you know, just go down the list. Elton John. I mean, they all have that sort of drive. That's Prince. You know, a lot of the big artists or big bands like U2. You know, that Coldplay. You name it. They have that drive. So talent and drive are, to him, that's what a manager is looking for. Really, you know, if you have all this stuff together and you have that, you're going to really set yourself up for success. An agent, we talked about that, is if you can get your guarantees up to a certain point, they're going to get really interested, you know, and want to move forward with you. And sometimes it's like a courtship. You don't necessarily sign a deal with them. They might throw you a bone, you know, see how you do at a couple of shows or backing up a band and see how it works. You might go to do that for a year or so. And so that the relationship might not be signing a deal with an agent. It might be a slow relationship. Like I said, I never signed my deal with Feldman ever. We just didn't, you know, get it in. We paid to them, you know. And we booked some, they booked some, it all worked. And so that's agency. And again, they get 10%. That's a pretty simple deal, actually. And they'll often take the guarantees, because if you play a gig, usually it's 50% up front. Usually goes to the agent, they hold it, so they get paid. They always get paid. So agents, record labels, it's really interesting how things have changed now with record labels, because there used to be enough money in selling records to sustain a record label, and now there isn't. I mean, it's starting to get better. So what record labels did is they morphed into these, like arts and crafts, which is management, agency, label, publisher, you know, everything. And they sign you to what's called a 360 deal, which is everything, right? The problem is, arts and crafts, it works because they have people that do all that work. Some labels were signing people to these 360 deals because they wanted the revenue, but they didn't have people on staff who knew what a publisher did, and they didn't know how to manage people. And so you had all these not great situations where artists were having to sign all their rights away and then not having the right people working their product. So there's been a lot of sort of weird hybrid deals going on in the last 10 years. And you may, as an artist, be presented with these kind of deals. And my advice is always, well, look at the company and make sure if they're taking a right, that they have the goods, that they can, you know, what kind of relationship do they have with film supervisors? Well, if you don't, why are you taking my publishing? Like, you know. So that's important for labels, and there's different types of deals now. Labels, especially the big labels, have become much more marketing companies. So it's often, if you produced a record, you can actually get them to take you on, not as a direct signing where they pay for everything, but you deliver records to them and they put them out and they market them for you. So it's more of a license. Those are great. I did that with my deal with Virgin, and it was the best thing because I got it all back and I put it all out myself, and it was great. So my advice, if you want film and television, is have a relationship with a music supervisor. And you know what? They're awesome people. I mean, they really are. I mean, all the music supervisors I know in LA and New York and Toronto, it's That's what they do. They love independent music because it's easy to license. And if you can, you know, for example, Whistler Film Festival has a showcase and a whole bunch of film supervisors come up and watch artists. And every time there's always placements that come out of those live performances. So get in front of supervisors, get to know them, get them to know them as people, and you can definitely do it. No question about it. So that's actually one area that's really great for independent artists. And there's a thing called publishing administration. One of my biggest clients, Hivetown Publishing, they do what's called publishing administration. So there's different types of deals. The publishing administrator doesn't take your copyrights. What they do is they take, let's say, 15 or 20%, and then they have the relationships with all the supervisors and find the deals. So there are those kind of deals that are great. If you can find a really good publisher that will do a publishing admin deal for you, that's actually a really, really good thing.
Do you do consulting? Like,
do I?
Someone
I
say we want to do this, you know.
I have, but to be fair, in the past, like I used to do a lot of that, and I tend to refer people to colleagues as opposed to, because it's not fair on clients if I can't put 110% in. I just wouldn't do that to my clients. But for example, I have a distribution deal with Sony, The Orchard, through my record label, and so sometimes with clients, if they would prefer to put it out through The Orchard instead of CD Baby, I'll help them out. You know, so I do help clients where I can, but I don't. You know, I think it's important whomever you have a relationship with that they're going to give you that amount of attention that you need. That's critical.
Absolutely.
So, any other questions? Yeah.
So I've been producing for a few clients, and every now and then I'll draw up a production agreement. Are there any resources that I could have access to that could give me a better idea of what to be putting in these, or are there any pitfalls I should avoid, or anything that absolutely should be in these agreements?
Well, I mean, obviously I'm going to tell you to come to a lawyer.
Right.
But what lawyers can do, and what I do often, is create a template for my producer clients. I have a ton of producer clients, and what I'll do is I'll create a template so that basically 90% of your deals are going to be points, or like fee, points, some kind of songwriting clause, and it's pretty basic.
Right.
And that's what you do, and I really, you can fill in the blanks after that. You don't need me for every deal.
Yeah.
So I would do that with, we were talking with one of the people about side performer agreements. Like, I'll do a template. So I charge a little bit more for those, but once you get it, it's yours. And then you don't, you know, a lot of people won't come to a lawyer because they think every time, you know, it's going to cost them, right?
Right.
So with my publisher clients, they actually want me to draft every publishing deal every time, and they are happy to pay for it. But for some of my producer clients, it's much better just to create a template that works for you.
Yeah.
And that if you only have to come back to me if there's a subtle change, and that's a small fee as opposed to a wholesale change. You know what I mean? It's a lot. Like if I only have to do 15 minutes or half an hour versus 2 hours, you know.
Right.
So that's usually the way I work it. So you know, there's ways to do it so that it's reasonable.
Okay.
But it's something to think about, because if it isn't done properly, it can really mess you up too.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Good. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Rob for coming out. You're amazing. You're elite. If you guys would like to pick up a book, it's probably one of the best investments you would make.